This stuff here, Yerushalmi Shekalim. In the article's edition on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, the second line down on Rav Chisda. It's hard to find in the other editions. It's on Daf Chav Aleph Amud Aleph Beis in the Vilna Yerushalmi. In the Vilna Bavli Yerushalmi, it is on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. If you look at the way it says Taki Chat in the Gemara and in the right-hand margin, left-hand margin, and you go down 13 lines from there, you'll see it says in brackets Chananya ben Chanila, and then it says Amar Rav Chisda. And that's what we're up to. But before we start that, I want to just mention one thing relevant to yesterday, which is at the end I was talking about Shomei and Medaber. And the article brings down that there in the Bavli, it says that in the parallel Bavli in Sanhedrin Zion Beis, it says, you have to have one, two people speak and one who understands. Not all 70 have to understand. There was a discussion, what is Shomei and Medaber, what exactly means that all 70 in our had to be Shomei. So, as we mentioned yesterday. But even in the parallel, so it says not that all 70 have to understand, but even one understand. And of course, one could try and reconcile the two sugyas, but that's not our purpose for today. So the going further, and the Bavli brings down that that this is in the days of the civil war between Aristobulus and Hyrcanus, who were eventually that led to the Roman conquest by Pompey of Eretz Yisrael. I believe it was 63 years before the Common Era. But I would bring down here that they went to Psachia to find out what was going on with the story about the bring. So the Rashi and Tosfos have a discussion in the Bavli and Menachos, whether it's the same Mordechai Psachia, and he was Marach Yomim from the time of Esther until the time of Aristobulus and Hyrcanus, or it was this, like we mentioned, that all the people in charge of the this office in the Beis Hamikdash, who were particularly, obviously, people of particular astute understanding, they were all called Psachia or Mordechai, based on the original office holder. So, so two similar mices here. They didn't know before they bring the carbon omer. So, there was there a person who was mute. It says deaf mute, but I don't think so. It has to be deaf mute, just mute. He put one of his hands on rooftops, on one hand on shacks. They brought in front of Psachia. He said to them, this place is called the rooftops of the shacks, or the gagos, or the shacks of the rooftops. They went there, and they found barley for Korban Omer. Another version, or another time, the entire world was afflicted by a blight, which destroyed all the grain. And then they were to bring the Korban Omer. There was a certain mute. Put his hand on his eye. His hand on sukra. Sukra, of course, in modern Hebrew would mean sugar. And modern classic Hebrew does not mean sugar. It means like according to Carbonator, it's the door, or the hole in a doorpost where you put in the bolt when you lock the door. According to the Pnei Moshe, that's the same Pnei Moshe. According to the first time Pnei Moshe, a secher, I think, which is also true in modern Hebrew, means a dam, the dam of a river. Okay. So Pnei Moshe brings that both shatim. Armalone. So he said to them, east. Outside the Miskre Ein Sukar is a place called Ein Sukar, the eye of the dam, or the hole in the door, or Sukar Ein, or vice versa. And they went there and they found that the barley for the Korban Omer. Okay, another story with Psachia, again showing the great wisdom of either the original Psachia and or whoever was in charge at the time. There were three women who brought sets of birds to the Beis Hamikdash in order to sacrifice them. Now, later on, I guess they made it that they didn't bring their birds. You brought money and you bought the birds. You bought the birds from the Beis Hamikdash, but evidently at some point they actually brought the birds, or perhaps they brought the money for the birds. If you can, achas le nasi. The one said it's for my ayin. So one said it's for my yam. Achas le zivasi. One said for my ziva. So the Zusha, they didn't understand exactly what these women meant. So Zusha Le Nasi, the one who said Le Nasi, that she is she's flowing like a fountain. In other words, she's seeing blood, and she's a zava, and she's bringing the halacha is that a zava brings two birds, one for an ola, one for a chatas. So this must be what she's bringing for. So and therefore they want to make one ola, one chatas. Amalon, so Psachi said to him, no, ba'aina sakanas. No. She had a sakana in her eye. She's pointing for her eye. And therefore, this is these two birds are both nadavas, and they're both olos. Similarly, Zusha Masi, the one who said she's bringing for a sea, she's flowing like a sea. In other words, she's a zava. No, she also went to a danger of going down to sea. Into the both, they're not one chatas one ola, they're both olos. Zusha Ziva see that the Savi Mema Zava Mamish. That she was out. Okay, she said Zivasi, right? She must be a Zava. Armona said no. Zeba, she has a speech impediment. Zeba lito has been a wolf came to take a child, and also she's bringing a carbon in the dava. They're both olos. So the Ktakin Chatin says Umaisila. It brings down his stories. Toshi Chacham Gadol, since he was very smart. For Yodei Tiv Lashonas Having Dover Zeh. He understood this. Somebody else might have stumbled in this. The art scroll here, note 16, says that from the Yerushalmi seems that he knew that there was certainly a case where in the Paragir Sugi in the Bavli Menachem says they said Shema. Maybe this is what they meant, and they had to check it up, and they found that this is in fact the case. But in any event, the idea was that he understood that. So he understood languages. He also had an intuition of knowing what people meant when they used euphemisms, and that it was not to be taken literally what they said, but rather not to be taken like the other people took it, but the way he understood it. Okay, Sarah Mishnah Ben Aki was in charge of Choli Me'ayin, of the people who had intestinal disorders. So the Aidesha Yukanim Mahachim Mechefim Ritzba. Kohen would walk barefoot, and they had to go barefoot in the basement 365 days a year. They were not allowed to wear any foot covering, so obviously they got cold or hot, but mostly cold probably. They ate a lot of meat. They had to eat the meat of karbonos because the Kohen Ochlim Balim Miskaprin. The Kohen have to eat in order the owners to get atonement. For Shosi Maim, they drank a lot of water, and back then water was considered to be pretty dangerous because water carried all sorts of diseases, which the wine and beer and other things which they drank didn't have. So, since they were doing all these things, they would come to intestinal disorders. And he knew this I guess is supposed to be like Achaya, that's his name. Dein chamor tav lemaya, vein chamor samam lemaya. He knew which wine was good in order to heal the intestines, and which one was samam is like, I guess, sam hamoves, right? Something which is bad for the stomach. The Chayre has a girsa. I don't think it's in the Gra here. It says mimatzmes, instead of misamem, which is mirakech umemis umazik shalishtim menu. It causes diarrhea. There's another pshat is that to say that misamem is like to close up, and that means he knew which ones open were good, and that they opened up the digestive system, which are good, and that they closed up the digestive system. So when the people were needed regulation, he knew how to regulate them. Okay, I don't see anybody who actually says misameim. Misama means to close up, but I think that could be shot. Let's like listom. Okay, but anyway, some people say tavla me'aya is good and samla me'aya is bad. Some say there's two different ways of being good for the stomach. One, okay, it's, according to the we call tav me'aya means to stop up, and sama means to dissolve. Except Tachai is bad, according to the Korban Moshe is good. But I think it's the other way around. I think Tav means it's the makes them go, and Sama means to stop them up. Okay. Anyway, the doctor, he was a doctor, knew what to do. He would dig the dugouts and caves in order to get to the water, and and he knew cave Maya, which stones had cold water. Cave and which stones each base sharvuve have sharvuve, which seems to be hot water, hot springs. Had mate, hein sharbusa mate, and the heat, to what extent it would reach. Okay, so he was very, very expert in knowing the nature of the springs he would dig. Rabbi Acha said, Umeis beno batzama. This is also brought down in the Bible as well, that his son died as a result of thirst. He died of thirst. And the Talmud Chaytim brings down the principle here: that which a person is very, very meticulous. If he's the damages just a little bit off, he gets very much punished. In Matzinu, it says Baruch Hu medaktik im sabiva kachut asayra. Baruch Hu is much more meticulous. Those people who are close to him. It means an interesting parallel. Matzia Perek Zayin, but Matzia paid out on base. Belezer b'Shimon Yom Echad Chazoy deKonapik Richa Shem Iune. One day after he died, his wife saw that the worm came out of his hair. Chalash Datoy, and his wife became upset. Because she preserved in the attic for 20 some odd years, because he said Chachomim were not going to bury him properly. Whole story there. So he said he shouldn't be upset. It's only this one thing. Once I heard them making light of a Tam Chacham, and not protest properly. So he was very meticulous about this. Otem was no mishma damim. He would never listen, hear Tam Chacham be insulted and remain silent. That's what he said about Matzia, that he didn't protest properly. V'chanami, here too, by Nechunia, he had this tremendous good midah to bring water for the masses. When something happened, which is inappropriate, so then Nenesh B'Zeina Gufa, he was punished in this matter itself. And this Gemara brings down another famous Chazal. Amar Rabbi Chanina said, "Man Rachmana Vatran." They said, "Kosh Baruch Hu lets things go. Is mevater alaverus. He doesn't care. Yivatru b'nei mioi, that his intestines will be let go. Let's see, according to Talmud Chaydim on this as well. Yisvachim name Magdaminam Parakim of the Kulin. Apostle who has Chavachay Neka, because Baruch Hu made you and set you in properly. And I used to Baruch Hu Kanios Badam, because Baruch Hu made preparations in a person. Shnebacham on him, if one of them overturns, and Yochol Yichios, Vubnei Miayim. Now those are the intestines, right? We say Chalulim. We say Be'ashayotzer. So then Chalulim, etc., etc. And brings down evidence from this. There it brings down Chulin. And since all of a person's life is contingent on his intestines, it says if it turns over, he gets he dies. Can't call him slow to all the world. Slim Maaseh B'nei Adam, or condition on human activity. Leave no Sahar some, like straight up Nefesh HaChaim here, right? To build them or destroy them. Because the people say, that the Avera, I'm sorry, he's Vadrun, come over, I skipped the word. Skipped a, well, yes, the person says, Baruch is not as Mabata Nabeirus, as the Nechra Katan, his small world will be destroyed. In other words, there's again, like Nefesh Chaim says, any Aveir a person does has an impact on Loma Salyonim, right? And you can't say that it doesn't have any, Kosh Baruch is just going to let it go. Kosh Baruch can't let it go because the Loma Salyonim are impacted. That's a tshuva, such a big chiddush that even though you could cause damage, Loma Salyonim, there's a way to rectify it. But and we're learning this in Tafshin Pei Vav, very appropriate. So Kosh Baruch that's not Aveirus go. Kosh Baruch says, except for Rishon, obviously it's a special halacha, but the person has to fix his Aveirus, not say Hashem's going to let it go. No, Aveirus create a pagam in the world, and a person says they don't create a pagam, he's going to be nifgam himself. So that person, Hashem lets things slide, his intestines will slide. And because Baruch Hu is marich af, he's patient. But eventually the punishment has to come. It's interesting here. Kotakan brings out marich ruchei v'chein malachav. He tells the malachim, which would, malachi chavala, which would take retribution from the sinner. He tells them, they want to go and run and take retribution. Malach af, because Baruch Hu restrains the malach of the af, the malach of the of anger, but the delay. Eventually, the retribution comes, and the straight nefesh chaim. You sap the strength of the kaviyachol shematishin p'koch mamar shamala. Says the sap the strength of the heavenly pamayo. It's really family, heavenly family. In other words, the malachim's strength is sapped, and therefore they want the retribution, so to speak. Shamdin nekulam, a man is constructed of all the kaichos yanim. Kim tzalmo kim asav who buzz the davar yechbal lo. Somebody who's maxis, it's going to damage him. Chokach pogame shorsho, and any kayach, he can damage the root. Chachat, and each one will take the retribution. Amray B'Yachar says, of course, I mentioned this before. Sivo nisara ma'od. It says, Yavo Elokeinu b'ayach rash eshmav tochel sivav nisara ma'od. Medakim kachut asar. Because Baruch is meticulous with the with those who surround him, with even the slightest sin, and interesting. Yaakov ish chalak, ve'esav ish soir. Interesting, the connection. He says that you get mixed. Averos are like hairs by which you're caught. Tzaddikim have their base of the world. They have lots of koichos which they have to very carefully monitor. Also roshem. Even the minor damages they make makes a major impression. Being the shpatim midas emes are judged by the midah of truth. Therefore, the tzaddikim in older times were afraid. Shema yigrom achet avchet koldu. Yaakov Avinu, right? Shema yigrom achet. Medakti remember lo mazek they should konsu kla pesach chaltas rovetz. Because Baruch was meticulous with them, so they shouldn't get close to the deficits of the Averos. Okay, I guess it means when they shouldn't get into Gehenim, the Pesach of Gehenim, they should avoid it. Amray Beis says, Lo mitam hazeh, not from this pasuk, Elamin madich siba, rather another pasuk, which teaches us, Norahu akol svivav. Okay, the pasuk in Tehillim Pei Tes Ches Kel Naretz V'Sok Nashim Rabba Norahu akol svivav. I'm just going to say. In times of slichus, we say this passing slichus. So moroa krovim yosel mechokim. There's more moira. There should be more fear on those that are close to Kush Baruch Hu than those that is Kush Baruch Hu. Rabbi Chagai b'Shem Shmuel b'Shem Shmuel. Nachman said, "Ma'aseh b'Chosid Echos, Ma'aseh b'Chosid shechofer boros tichin mars lo rim shavim." He dug wells of water for various different ways, cisterns and dugouts and caves for wayfarers, passers-by. Once his daughter was passing by, going on her way to get married. The shut for Nar, and she was swept away by a river. Everyone is coming in to try and console him. He would not be Mekabel Tanchumim. So all Rabbi Pinchas Be'er L'Gabei Boy Menachem say he came into Menachem him. V'loki Be'er Menachem say would not be Mekabel Tanchumim. So Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair evidently did not know this. So it says the Tagan Chadin Mason is talking min alev lo min achai, right? So she didn't know, but Yerushalmi thought he was just being stubborn, not accepting Tanchumin. That's the way the world works. Everybody dies, but he actually was not Mekabel Tanchumin, even though it was a chassid, because his child was still alive. Like Yaakov Avinu, it's not Mekabel Tanchumin on Yosef. So Armalei Daniel chassid, but Yerushalmi didn't know this at this point. Armalei Daniel chassid, Hainu chassidechon. This is your chassid, that he's not Mekabel Tanchumi. Does not realize this is the derech of the world. Amalei said to him, Rebbe, kach v'kach oisev, v'kach v'kach ira. How could this be? He did all these chasidus with the Beiras, and this happened to him? So Rebbe said, oh, now I understand. Amar, Efshe Mechabe is bor b'mayim, v'kapcho b'mayim. He was Mechabe Kosh Baruch Hu with water, and Kosh Baruch Hu then punished him with water. Miyana flo havara be'ir. The bus bito also. So merely the news went out. That the daughter had come out of had been survived, and she came. Isam is sukasa isaris. Some say that she grabbed onto a sukasa, and different interpretations here of what a sukasa is. Some say sichta. Some say it was a branch. She sees onto a branch. Based on what we learned, say it was actually I think it's what most everybody says. It's a branch, but it could be it was the same secher we had it over before. It's not suchta but silchra, the dam, but it's everybody learns it's a branch. A branch or a peg or something, a protrusion of some sort. A mal came down in the form of Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair and saved her. So the first ask you, what's in between? How did Pinchas Ben Yair was so sure that she would be saved? What about Nechunya, whose son died in the year thirst? We see that Kosh Baruch Hu Medaklim Sil Chuta Saira, and how come here he was so the daughter was saved? So the answer they give is that whatever Nechunya did wrong, this might chassid not do wrong. But I think that pshat, this goof of the Gemara is telling us. It says Pinchas Ben Yair's interventions, what saved her? It was intervention of tzaddik can help save somebody who's chayav misa, or somebody who has a great penalty coming. And Pinchas Ben Yair, when he heard of this, he intervened actively, and that's why the mal which came down was the mal by Pinchas Ben Yair. It was the schus of the tzaddik which saved her. Now, in the case of Chuli, evidently there was no tzaddik to get involved to save. Here there was. So therefore that was it's a similar story in Brachos where Yechina ben Daisa, as I said, that where the which is brought down here I thought it was in Brachos. Brings down to Bavli and Vomas and Baba Kama. No, that's not this. It's a different story. But and there it says, in fact, that the Tefillah Rabbi Chaim ben Daisa was effective, right? So that could be Same idea over here with Pinchas ben Yair. That the Bavli is in Yivamis Kuvav and Baba Kamanun, and there it says, actually, the other story is about Nechunya himself, the daughter of Nechunya, as opposed to the son of Nechunya. The daughter was saved and not the son. And again, because of the intervention of China Medaisa. There's a whole issue about when all this take place, because China Medaisa was after the actually, Rechil Medaisa was at the time of the Beis HaMikdash. I'm not sure. There's a whole discussion as to who was whom and which period it took place, because Rechil Medaisa was certainly after the Churban, so it couldn't be Nechunya. And now it's this story over here has to be somebody else, because Nechunya was earlier. But I don't think Rechil Medaisa could have been at the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the time of Yochanan ben Zakkai. But the Pashas, most of his activity was after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, but it's possible. Okay, so go on to the next person in the Mishnah. Gvini Cruz. Machriz Beis HaMikdash. You make announcements Beis HaMikdash. My Omer. What do you say? HaKohanim la'avodah. Malvim ducham Yisrael ma'amod. He'll tell everybody to go to their places in order to prepare for the avodah. Agrippas HaMelech Shama Kol at Shmona Parsos. Agrippas heard his voice at a distance of 8 parsos. The similar story in the Bavli and Yuma, where it gives a different measure of how far away it was. But in any event, he gave him a lot of gifts. Ben Gever on Ilas Hashar. Ben Gever is in charge of the Ilas of closing the gates. Tigrim Rabbi Kuku Rav Kumi the base Rabbi Shila. So Rav explained in the actually this is going on now it says in Yuma. If you take a look in the Karma 8, it says Kara Gavra Hadatan Perakama the Yuma. Choyim Tamina so Mizber Kriyas Hagever. Mar Kriyas Hagever, Shichris Hachroza, Vanishkar Gvini Cruz. So that one of the interpretations is that Kara Gavra is going to Gvini Cruz. But the other interpretation is, as we shall see, the Tani Gota. Okay, so Tigrim Rabbi Rev Kumi the base Rabbi Shila Kara Gavra, Akris Cruza. Right, this is the Gvini Cruz. Armei Kara Tani Galta. So they said, no, there's another interpretation that it's when the rooster crowed. Armei Vatniya Ben Gever. So he said, okay, the Gavra cannot be going on a tiny goal, because it says Mishnah, Ben Gever was in charge of the Shorim. So again, Ben Gever could not have been a tiny goal. So the Gavra of Kara Gavra also cannot have been a tiny goal. It must be a person, and was Gvini Cruz. Okay. Ben Bavia Bakia. We said Ben Bavia is involved with Bakia. What's Bakia? Shemizayig es Absilos. He would make the wicks. Rabbi Yossi the Kufra. There, Yossi came into a place called Kufra, Bamemania land. They wanted to make him. He wanted to Bamemania land Parnasim. They wanted to appoint upon them Parnasim, leaders who should be concerned with the matters of the city. Blokim, they did not accept his appointments. All of them are command. He came in and said in front of them, and I guess they did not accept the ways because they didn't want to. Either because they didn't feel it was Lefik Freedom, that's what Moshe says, or that they didn't want the covet. So either they were, and that's what Talking Chalatin says. So the opposite interpretations. So he came in Darshan, all of them are command, Ben Babi Pakia. Ben Babi was in charge of the Pakia. He was mentioned with the greats of all generations, even though, so to speak, he was only involved with the Pakia. So, you are going to Valchayin Pashas. Evidently, had to do with tzedakah. Lokoshkein is certainly a tremendous chus. That's either not beneath your dignity, or it's something which you should do, even though you want to be rechem rakah. But these are extremely important purposes, so therefore you should get involved. Okay, and of course we'll stop here for today.